Yo guys, what is up? Max in our Borderlands 4 video, and today we're doing a deep dive into defenses. Now, this is not a video that I'd probably have to make for any of the prior Borderlands games, but Borderlands 4 has some of the deepest build crafting we've ever seen, and I think a layer of that is all of the new ways that they've added to make your character survivable. We've got new mechanics like armor, we've got new mechanics like Overshield, and a lot of those things were kind of just question marks for me, but now I've gotten to play the game on various occasions, and I've gotten a lot of answers from the devs on what these new like defense layers are and what their intentions behind them are, and so I hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. We're going to be going over everything you need to know. Let's get right into it. So let's start by talking about armor. Now, armor is a new defense type. It is in place of shields, meaning that you can use the armor or shields. In this game, it's their first time like really getting an armor system, which is something we've been requesting for a while. Now, armor works in a very, very interesting way, and I actually got to talk to the devs about this and like their design philosophy behind it. So this number right here is your total armor value. This number is your segments. So each armor is going to have a armor value, and then that's going to be split into a certain amount of segments. This is 325 armor, and it's going to be in 2 segments. So each segment will be 1/2 of 325. And while you have armor, this number is flat damage reduction. While you have your armor up, any damage that is incoming is going to get reduced by a certain percentage. So while 325, for example, might not seem like a lot, the damage that's going to be incoming is going to get reduced by 29%, so it'll like last you a bit longer. Now, the big difference between armor and something like a shield is armor constantly regens. So this is the armor bar. As you can see, this is 325, but not each segment is 325. It's 325 divided by 2 into each. So like we can see like right there's 1 to 83. Now what happens is when your armor, which is constantly charging, regardless of if you're in combat, taking damage, whatnot, it always has the same like charge rate. When it reaches its full, it will give you 1 armor bar segment. So we see it reach full there, and then all of a sudden we've got a full armor bar. Now this will give you like the full length of an armor bar. For example, if you're like 5% away from reaching max, it'll give you that 5% and in a whole nother bar, for example. Now, the big thing with armor is that you're going to get these bars much slower. You have to wait this whole time to get an additional armor bar. So armor recharges a whole lot slower than shields, but it gives you damage reduction, and also it constantly regens. While you're using armor, their kind of goal is that you're going to be pushing forward with it on. You're going to be advancing. It's going to be more aggressive feeling because it's going to be regenning regardless of your thing, and it'll have like more of kind of a buffer in terms of like survivability. But once you lose it, you're without it for quite a while because you've got to get all of those bars back. Versus shields have a much faster like recharge rate and a faster fill rate, but you have to like get out of damage to have them recharge all the way. So shields, you can have your shield up basically recharging between any enemy as you duck behind cover. Armor is more aggressive, you're going to have more survivability, but between fights and, you know, if it breaks, you're going to have a harder time getting it back. Now, you are going to be more susceptible to corrosive damage while you are wearing armor, versus with the shield, you're more susceptible to shock damage. So it's something you can kind of like plan ahead. If you're going to be fighting a shock boss, maybe you put on armor. If you're going to be fighting a corrosive boss, maybe you put on a shield. And they're also going to have different, completely different, you know, augments or roles that they can come with. So like, for example, this legendary armor shield has bare knuckle. On melee hit, consume an armor segment to grant 100% melee damage. When armor shield is empty, grant 50% melee damage. It's got knockback. On armor segment break, knocks back enemies and grants 30% movement speed. And mini nova on armor segment break, trigger a nova that deals 89 damage. Kind of, you know, not all of the roles that they can get on armor, but from like looking at a few of them, they seem more like aggression oriented, like novas and melee damage and like movement speed, those kind of like more gap closers, versus shields are more like defensive things like reflect, for example, or adaptive to get, you know, some extra damage mitigation. Now, where things get really crazy with armor is it's actually technically still considered shield for like skill points. So, for example, this is Rafa's Shield Barriest. Overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased shield recharge rate and improved shield regen delay while Overdrive is active. This still applies to armor. And things like field repairs, whenever Rafa activates an action skill, restore a portion of his max shield capacity. If his shields are already full, gain overshield. This also works for armor. Anything that says shield still applies to armor. So, for example, with Rafa, you can just activate an action skill, and where armor would be more difficult to get back, like typically, now you've got things that are just instantly restoring your armor, which is incredibly potent. And armor can also benefit from Overshield. Now, what actually is Overshield? Overshield is another new mechanic in Borderlands 4 for survivability that has a bunch of different synergies. From my calculations, Overshield by default is about 70% of your max shield capacity, whether that's armor or shield, you can gain as Overshield. Now, Overshield, unlike armor or normal shields, does not regen. There's no way to get it that I've seen besides things that directly give it to you. So it's not like you can just like have passive Overshield gain, but there's certain skills that like when triggered will give you Overshield. Overshield lasts for a total of 8 seconds at default. And I say at default because even though Overshield seems to be about 70% of your max shield capacity and it only lasts for 8 seconds, there are certain skills that also give you increased Overshield capacity and Overshield duration. But Overshield lasts for 8 seconds, meaning if you're gaining it in combat, you get an extra layer of defenses. But if you have Overshield for a certain amount of time, eventually it'll just go away. It's not a permanent layer of defense that you can bring from encounter to encounter. It's more so something that you will activate during combat that will last you while you're fighting things and then go away afterwards. Now, Overshield is going to be great for defenses, but we're also already seeing a ton of things that rely on Overshield to give you damage increases. Like, I think it's going to be an offensive thing to build into as well. For example, this is the Protean Cell Shield with the legendary effect, Direct Current. Ground Slam to toggle this effect while enabled drains shield over time to grant 40% bonus shock damage, and damage taken passes through the shield. Now, this effect ends, you lose your 40% shock damage when the shield depletes. So if the shield is constantly draining and you're going to be taking damage to your shield, you wouldn't have this effect up for very long at all. So while this effect is active, it's on like a set timer. It's however long the shield takes to deplete. And then all of the damage that you're going to be taking is going to your health. Now, the big kicker with this is that if you can get something like Overshield seems to overwrite or like lead to all damage going to Overshield first. So something like this shield, as long as you're keeping up Overshield and constantly getting it, Overshield would protect your health bar, and it could theoretically, or it should, protect your shield. And then as long as you have a source of Overshield, you've got tankiness and 40% bonus shock damage on your grenades, your guns, your melee, your action skill, whatever. And this thing also has like Absorb for a chance to absorb bullets, adding to your ammo count, and Nova. I think there's probably some like other roles you'd probably want a like Overshield role because there are some like passive Overshield roles on shields. But that's just to say that like Overshield is going to definitely be a big part of building into damage as well. The other example of that has to do with an SMG. This is the Oh My God SMG, which has energy transfer. When energy shield is active, you get plus 50% damage by consuming your shield instead of ammo. When Overshield is also active, shield energy will not deplete. So basically, as long as you have Overshield with the Oh My God, you have infinite ammo, which is really, really nice, and 50% increased damage. So you're getting damage and infinite ammo if you're building into Overshield. Just another example of building defense to make your character actually deal more damage. Very last thing to mention is specific damage reduction. Now, we've kind of always had elemental damage reduction since Borderlands 1. You can roll it on shields and other places. It's never been something that's really all that impactful, but it does seem like Borderlands 4 is taking a lot of inspiration from other ARPGs, which a lot of ARPGs have elemental damage reduction as a big part of your survivability, such as games like Path of Exile or Diablo, and it does seem that there might be a little bit more focus on building up DR. We've seen it already on shields, we've seen it in other places, and we've gotten more specific things on a sheet. For example, I don't know if we've ever had kinetic specific damage reduction. That's pretty wild to me. In addition to damage reduction and all of the specific elemental damage reductions, I think this is just going to be another way on top of your like health regen, shield regen, overshield armor, and all that to build your character more tanky. I'm imagining this kind of stuff won't probably take into effect until at least endgame, but it is interesting that they've got this whole kind of sheet here. Guys, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.